Guten Tag. Welcome to
Tag.
tonight's shiur, Motzei Shabbos, Parshas Voero. And we have a whole list of questions, interesting things. So let's start with the first one. And that is, I got a question from a shliach somewhere in Russia, actually. And his question was, he won't manage to finish off Tehilim on Shabbos morning, or Shabbos Mevorchim, minute Chabad, to say the whole of Tehilim, Shabbos Mevorchim. He won't manage to say the whole of Tehilim. So he's asking me what's preferable. Would it be preferable that he says it next Shabbos, or he perhaps goes ahead Friday night? So just to discuss this a little bit. So I know that there was someone by the name of Rabbi, I think Moshe Levitt, not Moshe, his brother, but in his first name. He lived in Crown Heights, but he was a shamus in a shul in East Flatbush. And he would walk every Shabbos to East Flatbush and back. And he found he just didn't have the time to do the whole of the Tehilim because of his walking. And the Rebbe advised him, Yechidas, that he should, whilst he's walking, as said today by the Kiddush, there's this old joke that David HaMelech did a very smart thing. He took lots of bits of the davening and put them into a sefer and added a few other bits and pieces, and that's how he made the Tehilim. So there's lots of Tehilim which are familiar. So he said the Rebbe told him, to the Rabbi Levertov, whilst you're walking, you'll say the parts of Tehilim which you are familiar with, and then whatever. And then when you find a quiet moment where you can sit down and say a Tehilim, so you'll fill in the pieces which you left out. That's one thing. Now, then, when I was in New York for the Kinus HaShluchim, someone came over to me, and he says that he told me a couple of feedbacks on what he's listening to the shiur, the recordings, and he told me that in Chicago there was a Rabbi Schusterman, and Rebbetzin Schusterman, she was a Krinsky, a sister of Rabbi Yudel, Shalangayar, and she asked the Rebbe what she should do about saying the whole of Tehilim. And because she was a Rebbetzin, so people came to the shul and she would engage with them. So she wouldn't manage to finish the Tehilim on Shabbos morning. So the Rebbe advised that she should say Friday night. She should give herself a head start on Friday night. So I was very pleased to hear that because my wife was even more pleased to hear that there is a leeway to allow that. We'll see in a moment why I was concerned. At any rate, but then this shliach, his name is Rabbi Kirsch. So his father he's passed away recently, but he lived in South Africa. Very tmimus dekayid, and he had asked the Rebbe the same question. And the Rebbe told him to say whatever you can this Shabbos. Whenever you don't manage, you'll say next Shabbos. So you've got here a variety of solutions. One, and I told him, if that's what the Rebbe told your father, so follow that. So we've had three solutions. One is whilst you're walking, one is a head start Friday night, and one is to make up next Shabbos. It just also comes to mind that when Rabbi Lu went to Greenland, it was in the year of when he was saying Kaddish. And when he went into the Rebbe before he went, he kind of brought up the question, what should you do about the Kadeshim? I might have mixed up. It might have been a different event. But it was during his year of Avelis that he had to go somewhere, and he wouldn't be able to have a minyan for Tehilim. And the Rebbe at first hesitated as if perhaps it's not an issue altogether. But then the Rebbe said, you know what, when you get later, you can be mashlim, make up the Kadeshim at a later date. All right, having said all that, what's the hesitation? So you can see here on the screen, we've got here from the Bayer Heitev, that's in Siman Reish Lamed Ches. Nerachaim talks about Kvias Yitim Balaylo, Ein Likre Mikra Balaylo, and you should not be reading Tanakh without a period. That is, just reading Mikro shouldn't be done by night. On this, the Mishnah Berurah in his Shara Tziyun says, Kosev Bayer Heitev, She'ein Likre Mikra Balaylo. The Prima Gordon says you are allowed to read Mikra, and even for the Machmirim, Lesbze is Surah. It's not an osir to do it, it's just that it's better to do Mikra by day, and he brings a medrash to support this idea of Mikra is a daytime activity rather than nighttime. For us Chabad, so we have here from the Sefer HaMinhagim, Yodua. Yeah, starts off with this. Yodua, it's well known. And so that's the well known. I've given you some sources in the Simulation Lamed Ches. Obviously, I believe it's sourced in Arizal. I have also a Sefer called Birurei Minhagim from Rabbi, his Rabbi Shabsi. Gone out of my mind for a second. He lives in Tfas, and he's written a whole, in his Sefer, there's a whole 10 pages about this possibly. So, Yodua shebalaylo hochel mi, Shabsi Friedman, his name is. Yodua shebalaylo hochel mitzesa kechovim adat chachatzos halaylo. From the emergence of 3 stars until after midnight, ein noim tilim. We don't say tilim. Bechlal ze shiur tilim achotshi, including the daily portion according as it's divided according to the month. Aval oim shiur chumash v'tanya. Tanya is not a question. Chumash also you're learning with a pirush, so you can do that also. Well, if you didn't manage to do it by day, you can do it by night. But tilim, the recommendation is to make sure to be said before dark or after chatzos. The exceptions are the Vad mi Rosh Hashanah, Aser Simei Tshuva v'Yom Kippurim, v'Hoshana Rabbah. So these are the exclusion are from this Inyan is you can say Tilim Balayla, etc. during the Aser Simei Tshuva and Hoshana Rabbah. Hoshana Rabbah itself, we have about Tehilim, we have a switchover that we do Chumash until Chatzos, and we do Tehilim after Chatzos. That's the bracket over there. So that's these are the sources about the apprehension about saying Tehilim by night, and hence it was a big chiddush for me, and I'm happy to share that the Rebbe did give this Rebbe Schusterman the go-ahead to say Tehilim in advance by night. Okay, let's go on to the next thing, and that is about a Chosson having ash. Now, this is something which is written in Shulchan Aruch about in the Minhagim, which are Zeichel Churban, that when we have a moment of joy, we also remember the Churban, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, and as a result, we have various Minhagim to remember that. And so one of the Minyanim, which is written in Shulchan Aruch, is about putting Efer b'mkoim pe'er. The tefillin are called pe'er, a glory, and Efer the same letters, and losum lavi l'tzion pe'er tachas Efer. So the Chosson puts a bit of ash. So I was just by a chasna this week, and there's a chasna organizer, and he had a little tub with some ash ready, and I said it's not our minig. So I just want to tell you where I get this from. So what you have on the screen is from the memoirs of the late Rav Chadukov. He got married, I believe, in Riga, and he went into the Frierdiker Rebbe, whom he was working for also. And the Rebbe gave him some guidance. So one thing about as a Chosson walking around alone, he shouldn't go around outside alone. He should be accompanied by someone. And the inyan of not walking alone is the inyan ruchni. Okay. I asked whether to put ash on the Resh Chosson for Oma Shaloi. No. And then he also the very famous thing about the putting a silver or gold spoon. This is behemshech about some minig of treading on the foot of the kala. And then he says that as an alternative, it seems that they should, when they going into their house, there they should put a silver or a spoon or gold spoon, and you step over it. Not to tread on it, but arib again, to tread over it. Okay, we've discussed that in the past, but this is, if someone asks me where do I get it, it's not minik Chabad to put on ash, so I have it from Rabbi Chadukov's memoirs. He wrote it down, as a fairly reliable person as far as I know. In the notes of the editor, so they put there a reference to Nita Gavriel, etc. And he says that we rely on the Bes Yosef, who says with breaking the cup. And then he has a reference to the Biur Halacha in Siman Tov Kuf Samach. The Biur Halacha is from the Mishnah Berurah, but it's very of Zeichel Churban, but it's his very, very short. He doesn't address this directly. Just generally, he says all of these things which are Zeichel Churban, some of them we don't do. Okay. So we have sources, and there are lots of things which not everyone is particular about Zeichel Churban. Whatever reason, I mean, how consistent do you see in the community that you have a blank patch of Amor in front of the entrance as you come into the house? It's not so widespread in our community, at least, although there's a letter of the Rebbe Rashab where he talks about it and instructions to his family. But somehow it doesn't seem to be standard in some communities. So some things have been dropped for whatever reason. And here especially you see a logic that at the Chupah we do break the cup, and so the glass, and that's the Zeichel Churban at that moment. Okay, let's go on to the next point, and that is about saying brachas in the morning. So every morning we say it. There's 18, 19 brachas, then Birchas HaTorah. And those brachas are acknowledging, from a nation Sechavino, is acknowledging the experience which you go through. You are able to stand up, you open your eyes, etc. You get dressed. So here the question is, what happens if you didn't go through those experiences? So let's say you're still wearing your pajamas. So do you say brocho malbash harumim? Or you slept in your clothes, in your day clothes. So you didn't go through the experience of malbash harumim, etc. So v'yesh oimrim, this is in Siman Mem Hey, that's where the dinim of Mem Vav. V'yesh oimrim, that even if you personally did not go through the experience of being chayav to do this bracha, you still say the brachas. Because you're thanking Hashem, Baruch the Eibishter created the Torah Ha'olam. And nevertheless, a blind person doesn't pay Keach Ivrim because he's personally missing that. Then he says it recommended that you should go through the motions of being in Efshalei. So I'll just give you an example, as I'm reading this now. If you don't wear leather shoes, so you still say the brocho Chosson called Czarki, which has got to do with shoes. But it would be a preference to put on your shoes before saying brochas im Efshalei. Okay, fine. Now we're going to read from this is from the Shulchan Aruch. Now we're reading from the Siddur. Kol ha-brochas halolu. Voero, all of these brochas, that's from, this is after Lekai Neshama, before Hanoisen Asach. All of these brochas, you say those brochas, even if you weren't obliged to personally do them. Kagoin shener kol halaylo. If you're awake a whole night, and you didn't change your clothes. Then he goes on, some details. Im neya kol halaylo, if you were awake a whole night, so you want to say a brocha on shoes? Only after dawn. You want to say a brocha on clothes? You're wearing clothes and the whole time. You were awake the whole night. After Alos HaShachar. Why? What's Alos HaShachar? Because that's when most people, not most, many people are going to arise, and therefore after Amud HaShachar, minhoga sheloilam. Okay, then he goes further. If you did sleep, and you were obliged to do this bracha because you had this experience, provided after chatzos. And therefore, if you were, and then he goes, if you awake a whole night and you heard a tarnagol, you heard a rooster crowing, you can make the bracha. Now I'm picking on these words. You went to sleep and you woke up, and it's now after chatzos, and you had gotten undressed, and you got dressed. So when so then you can say the brocha, you can say the brocha, hamal b'shalomim. But even if you slept and you weren't nischayev b'hen, so then it looks like you have to wait till Amud HaShachar. That's when minhoga shel olam. That's my understanding. And therefore, the way I understand is if you wake up before Las Shachar and you don't have a rooster around the corner, so then don't say the brocho Nesach Vino. And if you're not wearing leather shoes, don't say the brocho She'asa Likol Tzorki. And if you're still wearing pajamas, don't say Malbash Yerubim and so on until Alos HaShachar, and then you can say those brachas, Kaminig HaHam and Hagashalaylam. That's my understanding on those words. Im Yoshin Balaylo Vernis Chayev Bohen. Then you can say the bracha Miyachin is Chayev Bohen. So if you went through the experience, which is acknowledged in this bracha, you can say it. So this fellow who asked me, he said, what happens if he said it earlier, I forgot, and he said the bracha. So I said, but ever don't say the bracha again. Because Rabbi Ber Levin was a tremendous Talmud Chacham, and especially in Halocho, published so many Sforim in Halocho, and so he addresses this in his Sefer Ha'orim Dover Shalom, and he says, "Mipashas Halosh Nire Shebazeh Yochel Levorech Afilu Kodim Hayom." He understands that you could make a bracha for the rooster even before Hayom, but Rabbi Chaim Noah says otherwise. But he says, my impression is that people would get up early and would say all the brachas, and even if they didn't change their clothes, and even if they didn't hear a rooster, and there were many chassidim who just fall asleep at the table by a sefer, and then when they woke up in the morning, they didn't say Birchas HaShachar. So he said, you can't prove it as a solid proof, but that's his inclination. So therefore, if a person already said those brachas, I would say, listen, some people say you're Yotze, but l'chatchila, I'm not convinced, and I would say leave them for Alos HaShachar and say them after Alos HaShachar. Let's go on to the fourth question, and that is a boy who was born after Shkia and before Tzesek Echovim, was born during twilight. When does he become Bar-Mitzvah? So here you have this in Siman Nun Hey. Siman Nun Hey talks about minyan, and therefore all the questions of who is eligible to make up a minyan come up in Siman Nun Hey. Just got to do with Kaddish. You need a minyan for Kaddish, that's how he comes in. If it was twilight when the baby was born, so you'd go Sveika deraisa l'chumra, and therefore for a din deraisa, he would not be by mitzvah till the following day. Reading in this, you could say, well, if it's to make up a minyan, and that's not a din deraisa, it's a din derabbanan, perhaps it should be more lenient. But I believe that's the general mahalach, that a bein hashmoshes birth, one takes the following day. Certainly when it's got to do a bris on Shabbos, for sure you'd be machmir, but all right, that's another discussion. Okay, let's move on. So here someone asks me that he's walking in the street and there's some dog's excrement, and he asks whether he's allowed to say a brocha davar shebikdusha. So I want to discuss this a little bit carefully to understand where we're coming from. So you have the pasuk in Chumash where it tells us that when Yidden would go to a camp, to encampment, the word campaign is from the same shirish. The word in French for a field is a champ, a field. So on the back, we're going out in the battlefield. So you should be careful, Mikhail Dovaro. And that's really, by the way, when the Rebbe was very concerned about the drafting of girls into the army, in the Israeli army, this was one of the things which was very concerned, that the Kedusha Samachne, you want to have the Shechina present there, and therefore to be very careful that there shouldn't be distractions from Kedusha. At any rate, so there it first talks about if a person has an incident of personal impurity and goes to mikveh, then it says, V'yod tiyelecho michutz lamachane v'yasas sham michutz. You should have a place, a venue for relieving yourself outside the machane. You should have also with your equipment, you should have a piece of some kind of spade of sorts. And when you are going to relieve yourself, then you're going to use the spade and cover what you left there. And if that's just to finish off, Ki Hashem Elokecha mishalech b'kerev machanecha, because God, Hashem, your God, is with you in the midst of your camp. Latzilcha, to save you, velos esav lefanecha, and to place your enemies in front of you and make them vulnerable to you. And v'hoya machanecha kodesh, your camp should be pure. V'lo yireh b'chod, the erbas dovo should not see something disgraceful, v'shov meyacharecha, and that will cause the divine presence, kivyochel, to go away from there. So this is where we're coming from. That whenever we want to mention a dover shebekdusha, so we have to be careful that there shouldn't be something which is contradicting the kedushas hamokim, the kedushas hamachane. So there's two areas. One is tznius, as in exposure of humans, and that's one area, one siman in Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Krishma, I think siman Ayin Hey, and then we have also about human waste. So then here is the question: what about animal waste? So that you have here in Shulchan Aruch, it's written mefurish in Shulchan Aruch in siman Ayin Tes. I just felt it was kedai to discuss where the whole question comes from. So the Torah tells us very clearly that human waste would be an objection to the presence of the Shekhinah. But here Shulchan Aruch says tzoyas kelev, the waste of a dog or even a chazer. If we place skins in them to work the skins, then you have to keep a distance like from human excrement. If not, you don't have to keep a distance from the object. There could be, if there's an objection, also a smell. But if there's smell, it doesn't bother you. Just the presence alone is not a problem. If there's a smell, you keep a distance, and the smell shouldn't bother you. I just want to share this clarity that here an animal waste is not included in the issue of kedushas hamachane. I made the mistake myself years ago, and was machmer on this, and then Rav Moshe Katzenellenberg in Oliver Shalom, he corrected me that it's animal waste is not subject to this whole thing of kedushas hamachane. Okay, let's go on to the next point, and that is number 6. Now, someone asked me, did anyone really ask this question about shadchanos? A parent asking for shadchanos. So I don't make up the shilas usually. This wasn't made up. So this is what happened. And of course I'm not going to divulge any details. So there's mechutan Chosson, and somehow he's getting kind of vibes from the other side that they should be given some kind of shadchanos, because the idea of the shidduch came from the mechutanister, and therefore perhaps she's a bit of a part-time shadchan also, and therefore kind of dropping these little message kind of remozim. So he asked me, tell me clearly, yes or no, is it? So here I just wanted to put him on, but I sent him this clip. This is from the Sefer Shidduchim, Sefer Hanisuin Chosson, and the source is from a Sefer Chut Hashoni, which is, I believe, from the Chavas Yor, in other words, about 400 years ago. And so I'm going to read what it says here. Parents of Chosson Kala who engaged with the shidduch of their children, they do not count as shadchonim when it comes to paying shadchonos. Even if, now, here the question is, if there was a shadchan and the parent was doing a lot of what shadchonim normally do, could they say to the shadchan, you know what, you did 50%, I did 50%, and therefore I can deduct 50% from the shadchonos money. So that doesn't count. The shadchan gets the full amount regardless of the fact that the parents had done a lot of shadchan role. That's the point which is being said here. And the way you look over the page, you see also the shadchan is an agent, a mediator between two parties. The parties, they have an interest. They feel a duty, and they have an interest to find a shidduch for their child. And it could even be in another setting. If it isn't a child, it's a immediate relative, whatever the circumstances are. But they feel a duty to arrange to find a shidduch for someone's close to them. So then they have someone, a mediator between the two to the other side. But the parties who are, I don't know what the English word is, but the ones who are the interested parties who need a mediator, they don't take shatchonas. They are the interested parties. So the shatchonas is to mediate between them, to bring them together and work out terms, whatever it may be. So very clear that an immediate relative, certainly a child, where it's a parent's duty to do what they can to find a shidduch for a child, for sure they do not have any claim for shadchanas, for the having succeeded to find a shidduch for their daughter or their son, whatever it may be. Okay. Question was asked, I had to answer it. Okay. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one who was asked this question. Right. So here's a question. Someone who is actually very unusual story, is married to a non-Jewish woman. Shomer Shabbos davens possibly 3 times a day, but he's somehow unable to disconnect from his non-Jewish wife. Do we give him aliyah l'Torah? Now, so this is from the Sefer Nesivim B'Stei HaShlichus, where stating that some poskim see the fact that a man has married a non-Jewish woman, that means he's dropped his Yiddishkeit totally, and therefore you shouldn't give him aliyah l'Torah. And you got here a list of sources: Shag, Michas Yitzchok, Igros Moshe, etc. And Igros Moshe says you can give him psicha. Well, and then not here I've had if Zion. Certainly in Chabad houses, in Vorfina places, they don't keep to this. And it's important to note that this is not a clear-cut halachic in Shulchan Aruch. This is an advice of poskim, and they understand that someone who's married out has dropped his Yiddishkeit totally. That is not necessarily the case nowadays. And if they're coming persistently, they're coming regularly to shul, etc. So you wouldn't say they've dropped their Yiddishkeit. It's just they are in a circumstance they can't get out of it. So I don't think one has to be, well, one can look at it differently. So if you give aliyah l'Torah, I think there's grounds to be made. You have to also be sensitive what's going to be the repercussions in the community, etc. So there's room to decide one way or the other. The person should be a chazan, I think, would be even more of a question. Give him aliyah, that's for him, but to ask him to be the leader of the community and to represent the community, so I don't think that should be allowed. Not with an absolute source, but you see that this is the tendency of the poskim. They look at it quite very, very strong, and we understand that very, very well. Let's move on. Okay. So someone's asking that they have someone's friend who had a baby girl, and people are saying you have to make a kiddush, and if you don't make a kiddush, it's going to be, it's important for the future of the child. And so they're asking 2 things: how important is it to make a kiddush, and number 2, can they make an event during the week, lav dafka Shabbos? So what you have on the screen is from the Sefer Sheva Chabris from Reb Shmuel Horowitz, all sein gesund, about the minhag. We all know the minhag of making a kiddush after a baby girl, to thank Hashem. That's what the kiddush is for, to thank Hashem for the birth of this child. And it's an opportunity for the other people, the community, to wish the parents to merit l'gadla l'Torah Chupah Masan Tovim, to bring up this child Torah Chupah Masan Tovim. And he writes about making the kiddush on Shabbos. Okay. I'm sorry I did not look up that note, number 7, where he says it should be done on Shabbos. So I might get this wrong. Then in the notes, he brings from the Hohenstapler. The Hohenstapler, so he was married to a grandchild of the Tzemach Tzedek. So there's a story about him, about that, about the importance of making a kiddush, to have the merit that 10 Yidden will give the brocho, Zeichel sein, lekadlo, Torah, Chupah, Masen Tovim. And one time a father came to him with a complaint or the problem that he can't find a shidduch. He's finding it difficult to find a shidduch for his daughter. And this Torah Stapler Rebbe said to him, that's because you didn't give a kiddush when she was born. And like this, you prevented your daughter from having the shidduch. And therefore, this next Shabbos, provide a kiddush, and people should give you the blessing then, like by the birth of a daughter. In other words, to Zeichem, Torah, Chupah, Masen Tovim. He did so, and indeed he was helped Bekorev. And he gives a source, a Sefer Iyona Halochos. I don't remember who the Sefer is. Okay, so you have there is this source. Does it have to be Dafka Shabbos? I don't know whether it has to be Dafka Shabbos. He writes it should be. If there's reasons, well, I'll have to look into it more carefully. I know that many shluchim dafka avoid making a kiddush on Shabbos because they don't want people, their well-wishers, to drive in, and therefore they make an event on a Sunday or on whatever it is. They make another day and not to avoid Chilul Shabbos. If there's a mile of making it on Shabbos, so the mile of avoiding it in Mechal Shabbos is probably a greater mile than making it on Shabbos. Okay, I see there's a few questions in the chat, so I'm going to open that. So someone's asking about going back to the shoes, שעשה called Tzarchi. Why do we not say the brocho שעשה called Tzarchi and Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur, which is Chabad? Other communities do say. So yeah. So when we say the whole world, minhag shel olam, do we mean goyim also, or do we mean dafka yidden? That's a famous discussion. Obviously, the Alter Rebbe is minhag shel olam, means minhag shel olam from of Yidden, and therefore, since on these days the minhag shel olam is not to wear shoes, therefore we don't say those brochas till the following day. Whereas Oval and Shiva Rahman Islam does say the brocha shasali called Sarki because of minhag shel olam after chatzos. Someone was asking about is the constant smell on a farm a problem for davening? That's an interesting point. Now, I've been told, and if you go to farms, you'll probably be able to corroborate one way or the other, that the sense of smell and the offense of a bad smell lasts for about 5 minutes. After that, you kind of just doesn't bother you anymore. You've got these people working in fish shops a whole day, and it doesn't bother them. You go in, you feel assaulted with that smell, and after a few minutes, it doesn't bother you. Now, doesn't bother you may not be enough of a heter for davening. Perhaps even it doesn't bother you if it still smells. That's a good point. I guess you're going to have to find then somewhere a little bit away from the smell, and where it's not so offensive. Right. Likely publicizing the shidduch issue prompted to others. Okay, let's move on. Number 9. So this is a question which someone brought to my attention about a young tree, and it was lifted from where it was growing and replanted. It was replanted elsewhere. Do you have to now start Orlo, the 3 years of Orlo, all over again? So if you had taken the sapling, the young tree, without any soil, and then you replanted it, that's for sure you'd have to start counting years of Orlo all over again. But here it was moved with enough soil that it would able to survive. So do you have to count Orlo? By the way, it's good to know that the din of Orlo applies to a potted tree also. It doesn't have to be in the ground, even if it's growing a lot. You have a fruit tree growing in a pot, the din of Orlo apply there. Okay, so the in Eretz Israel, I know that when the farmers want to replant from the nursery, they want to replant a tree out in the orchards, if they have a hashgacha, they have to tell the mashgiach, and the mashgiach will come out. They particular how to replant in a way that Orla doesn't come in again. So now let's read. This is from the Sefer Derech Emunah. Now this is Chaim Kanievsky Alav Shalom took the Rambam Hilchos Roim and he made it in a style of a Mishnah Brura, where the top is the Lashon Rambam and underneath he's got these ha'aras. So he says, writes the following: when you're moving a plant pot which has got holes at the bottom, it shouldn't be placed on the back of a truck, back of a lorry, which has got a metal bed. Because that is disconnecting its kind of connection to the ground through the air. If the floor or the bed of the truck was perforated, then mutter, that would be okay, or to use a trolley which has got holes. So that's what they do nowadays in Eretz Israel. If they would be transferring a plant, a sapling from the nursery to the orchard, they would use a trolley which is open at the bottom, so that there's an air connection between the soil. They are also particular not to go over concrete. If there's going to be a concrete path, so then that's also a moment where there's a disconnect between the plant and the soil, and then might be a chiyuv orla again. Now, all of these are all on the level of chumras, and because if the plant has got enough soil to live on, it's not disconnected from anything. It's a living plant. So that's the minig lemahachmir. Now there's a general rule that sofik orla in chutz la'aretz is mutter. So therefore, my answer to this question was that once it was replanted, you can rely on that it had enough soil to survive, and because it's chutz la'aretz, you can be mekel. So although lechatchila, the advice would be as described over here, not to disconnect it, not to put a layer which disconnects it from the soil, but b'diavad in chutz la'aretz you can be mekel. Someone asked, now here the story was a bit, he says, a woman he knows, her husband passed away, and he knows about the minig of not using the shoes of the deceased. Some people have got to make a point of taking if you throw a pair of shoes into the bin, perhaps someone will pick up the shoes from the bin. So you put the right shoes in the bin today, and the left shoes you put in the bin tomorrow, or whatever, a few days later, in a way that they won't come together. Okay, right. But what's happened is that this woman has been going through various crises in her home, this widow, and the shliach is asking, does it make sense to say that this has got to do with the fact that we have these shoes at home? So that was the question was put to me. My answer, I don't want to keep you in suspense. I told him that the presence of the shoes in the house, that's not the problem, and we don't understand ruchnistic things. Tell the woman that she should write to ask the Rebbe for a brocho, she should make hachlota tova, and that should be the keli for the brocho, rather than going all these derachim, which is not the kind of thing which, at least in Chabad, we don't dabble too much in this kind of stuff. So, but the source of this business about the shoes, you can see on the screen, is from the Kaf HaChaim. This is Yonah Day, and Sima Kufta Zayin, it talks about in Yonah of Sakona. So we have here, one should not wear the shoes of the deceased. They gave him the shoes of a deceased, and he wanted to give them to a poor person, and he was told, why are you giving it to a poor person? Sell them to a nochri, so it shouldn't be a sakona for Yid. And the money you should give the money to the oni. It's from Sefer Hasidim. Um, and it goes on to a guy who will buy it and you wear it for himself, but not that he should resell them further. So you can see that there is this concern that not to wear the shoes of the nifter. In the Sefer Shmiras Guf Nefesh, he's got a whole chapter about this. Some say it's only if the nifter was wearing them at the time he died, etc. They're different, but the pashtus it doesn't seem to be that way. There is a minig of not using those shoes. Okay. But to say that, therefore, since the shoes are in the house, therefore that's the explanation for the crisis in the house, I felt that's going a bit far. Okay, want to get rid of them, get rid of them. But just perhaps digress on this a little bit, that the Indian of chalitza, the mitzvah of chalitza, is as if to say that the nifter leaves a presence in this world. That's in the shoes, and that's the mitzvah of chalitza, of removing the shoe from the widow in a way as to release her from the continued presence of the deceased in this world. That may be a halacha background to this, or to have a Kabbalah background for this minhag, which is mentioned in the Bar Yehuda Chassid. So someone's asking if it's only shoes or other clothes. No, it's only shoes. This Kabbalah is only about shoes, and as I just said, that may be relating to the Indian of chalitza, which has got to do with shoes. Right. Let's move on to number 11. So a bocher sends me from the English translated Siddur. You have this annotated Siddur, which is Baruch Hashem been very popular, and it has by Kiddush, glance at the Shabbos candles, then say Yom HaShishi. So this boy is writing, you can see he's writing beneath. I'm not sure if I've seen this instruction anywhere else. So I don't know if it's written differently in a different location, but I notice a lot of people look at the candles by Savri Moronon. That's one point. So when do you look at the candles? And the second thing he asked, he's seen, are you meant to lift the becher? That's the cup of Kiddush by Savri Moronon. Doesn't know where he got it from. It wants to know if it's a thing. So for the second thing, I said, I don't know of a minhag to lift the cup by Savri Moronon. It could be, some people like to do that by Atavdola, by the words, when you say the words, eso. So I know that many people do have the minhag, well, kind of acting out the words of eso, lifting the cup. Okay, but the main thing I wanted to focus is on the first point about the minhag of looking at the candles. So looking around, this brought me to the Rebbe's Haggadah. So in the Rebbe's Haggadah, he writes, you start Yom HaShishi, and because although it's not in the Yom HaShishi is not it's the last two words of the pasuk. But Yom HaShishi Vaychul HaShamayim is a Rosh Hashanah Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's why we say those words Yom HaShishi. Uchashemaschil, when you start Yom HaShishi, Yitain Einov B'Neiros, you should look at the candles. B'Shas Birchas HaKiddush B'Kos, when you say the brocho of Kiddush, you look at the cup. And this, the Rebbe gives a reference to the Ramah in Hilchos Shabbos Siman Reish Ein Aleph Sifyud. So the Ramah brought this source, the minhag Maril of looking at the candles, and then he says, in the dinim of Kos Shel Brocha, there's a din to look at the cup. Yitain Einov Boy. To reconcile this, he says, earlier on you look at the candles, and later you look at the cup. So that's why this is the Ramah. Uchshemaschil. Yitain Einov B'Neiros, B'Shas HaKiddush, because you should look at the cup. Kamei B'Kos Shel Brocha, as in Kos Shel Brocha, V'chein Niroli. That's his reconciliation. Now, then we have the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch, and it's also the same place in Sif Yud Tes. He talks about, you start off Yom HaShish V'Chul HaShamayim, Shtevis of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Ochashemaschilin Toiv Litein Ein of B'Nei. So when you start, what does that mean? Start? You start Yom HaShishi. And he says, why do you look at the candles? Because Neir is 250, twice 250 is 500. And that is a refuah for someone who has been walking quickly, because it says if a person walks with very wide strides, so it deprives him of one out of 500 from his eyesight, and that's restored by the candles of Friday night. So that's the remez and the minhag of looking at the candles. Aval b'shas birchas hakidish, tzorech lutein einov bekais. But when it's birchas hakidish, you should be looking at the cup. Now, so the Rebbe's, the Alter Rebbe and the Ramo seem to be very similar. I'm just intrigued what happened here. Why does the Rebbe in the Haggadah refer us to the Ramo, when usually he refers us to the Shulchan Aruch? And reading it more carefully, the Lashon Birchas HaKiddush, the word Birchas HaKiddush is the Alter Rebbe's Lashon, or B'shas Birchas HaKiddush, whereas the Ramo said B'shas HaKiddush. So the Rebbe has in front of him, he has the Alter Rebbe, and he has the Ramo, and he uses the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe, yet he refers to the Ramo. What is clearer in the Lashon Birchas HaKiddush? You shouldn't think it means just Beir Pri HaGofen. Birchas HaKiddush means the long brocho sheketshonu. So again, if you look at the Ramo, B'shas HaKiddush, because you could say perhaps it means by the Hagofen, but Birchas HaKiddush is clear, it means the brocho, the long brocho, in addition to Beir Pri HaGofen. So I don't have an explanation why the Rebbe refers to the Ramo rather than the Alter Rebbe, but meanwhile we do have a clear source for this minhag, as it's written here. Glance at the candles, at the Shabbos candles, and to say Yom HaShishi. Let's move on. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about a man who he lives alone, and he lights candles, and then he comes to shul, and I had said I had a problem that you're meant to be Mekabel Shabbos within 10 minutes after lighting candles, as though a man doesn't have to be Mekabel Shabbos right away, as a woman does, but it has to be close by. And therefore I had the problem, what happens with Mincha? By the time he gets to shul until they start Mincha, it's more than 10 minutes, he's already been Mekabel Shabbos. Therefore, like a woman's Mekabel Shabbos by lighting candles, and therefore she can't daven Mincha afterwards, according to the Alter Rebbe. So the same thing would be a man, he's Mekabel Shabbos. That was the discussion last week. So someone wrote to me that this idea that when you light candles al tanai, you have to be Mekabel Shabbos altar shortly thereafter, is only if you're lighting the candles long before the Zman. But if you're lighting the candles just before the Zman, then it's okay. You don't have to be Mekabel Shabbos. 10 minutes doesn't matter. This 10-minute margin it doesn't apply. I'm not so happy with that, and so I saw in the Sefer from Rav Gedalia Oberlander, he has a Sefer on Neres Shabbos. He brings this and he seems to be accepting this. I don't understand this, and that is, you have a margin of an hour and a quarter from Plag HaMincha before sunset, and that's the time when you can choose to be Mekabel Shabbos earlier or later. As we know that in the summer we have a challenge that some people want to be Mekabel Shabbos at 7 o'clock, and you can't before 7:30 because it's before Plag HaMincha. But from Plag HaMincha until sunset, all of that time is potential Kabbalas Shabbos. Where do you draw the line? Close or far? How is it half an hour earlier? Is it that close or is it far? I don't know where you get. No, you're telling me a new thing. That this idea that if it's close to Shabbos, then let's say 20 minutes before Shabbos, you say, oh, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be Mekabel Shabbos after 10 minutes. But if it's half an hour before Shabbos, then it does have to. Where do you draw the line? I don't really understand this. So Rav Oberlander, in his Sefer, he gives us two references. One is to a Sefer Nezer Yisrael. And he brings this idea that you can make a t'nai, you can make a condition, a stipulation, not to be Mekabel Shabbos. And he brings from the Alter Rebbe, Shetadli koidim shiur toisvus Shabbos. Sorry. Shetnai ze mahani b'mokim atzerich. Mikol mokim ein lo lahasnois, ein lo imkein abal yikabel Shabbos somoch lahat lokoso. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. If a woman, let's say she has to go somewhere and do melacha, she wants to light candles before she leaves the house, then it's imperative that the husband is Mekabel Shabbos instead of her. And then he brings it a Maisa of shiur Tosfos Shabbos. If it's before the shiur of Tosfos Shabbos, it doesn't help. I'm just going to go to the second source, and then we'll discuss it a little bit more. Now, the first one, as I said, this is Sefer Nezi Yisrael, which before the war, it seems to have been a very popular sefer. It's quoted a lot in Shmiras Shabbos Chosson and others. And then we have the Minchas Shabbos, which is a commentary on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Minchas Shabbos. So he refers us to the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, where he says, Ein lo lahasnos t'nai zeh, a woman wants to light candles on condition not Mekabel Shabbos, but it's imperative that the husband then would have to be Mekabel Shabbos shortly after her lighting. Otherwise, it's going to be, you have to put it out and light it again, L'koved Shabbos. Okay, that we know. Ve'ayin derech hachayim, bedine hachnosis Shabbos. And that the derech hachayim from Yaakov Lisa, from him they get the impression that within the shiur of Tosfos Shabbos, which is 72 minutes before 3 stars emerge, then you can make it tonight. And if she can make it tonight, and the husband doesn't have to be Mekabel Shabbos. But if you light them before the shiur of Tosfos Shabbos is 72 minutes, then the condition doesn't help, and then he has to be Mekabel Shabbos right away. So all of this became very suspicious to me, and I'm going to explain to you what's bothering me. There is the shitta of Rabbeinu Tam, and there's a shitta of the Geonim. You got 72 minutes is the span of from the sunset until it's totally pitch black. Rabbeinu Tam has his shkia towards the end of that 72 minutes. The Geonim have their Ben Hashmoshes at the beginning of that 72 minutes. So when he says 72 minutes before stars emerge, he's obviously going according to Rabbeinu Tam, that you have the shiur of Rabbeinu Tam, and you have some 50 minutes before that it's ready. The sun is set already, but it's still voluntary to be Mekabel Shabbos. That doesn't work for us because we're going into the Geonim, and your Zman for Kabbalah Shabbos is from Plaga Mincha, which is an hour and a quarter before sunset. And I just have here the Derech HaChaim on the screen also. You can see that he's clearly, he says, let's have a couple of minutes. He says 58 minutes before this Zman, which you mentioned before, is the time of Tosfos Shabbos, where it's your choice whether you want to be Mekabel Shabbos then or not. If she wants to light Plaga Mincha, now if you've got 72 minutes, Plaga Mincha is 75 minutes. Whatever, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. I'm just really not confident with this whole thing of saying that if it's close to the Zman of beginning of Shabbos, then this stipulation of the Alter Rebbe of having to be Mekabel Shabbos Miyad, to say it doesn't apply, I really don't feel it's got a proper source. They say the Derech HaChaim is following Shittas Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, what do we have else? About the egg rolls. So we about 3 weeks ago, someone had sent me a picture of egg rolls where the pastry seems to be a hamotzi pastry. It's filled with egg or some other filling, and I had said, according to the Alter Rebbe, if it were baked, if you have a regular dough bake, the fact it's filled with savory food rather than with sweet food does not make it rezoinus. So if it's a hamotzi pastry filled with nuts and raisins, then that would make it hamoitzi. That would make it mazonis. So kokosh or something like that would be mazonis, because the filling reduces it from a bread to become a snack food. Whereas if the filling is like a knish, the kind of stuff which you'd have at a meal, meat or whatever. So what's the difference whether you have the bread with the meat separately, or you have the meat inside the bread? That's still meal stuff. And makes a difference for pizza. The fact that you have a dough and you have cheese. So according to the opinion that says any filling reduces from hamotzi to mazonos, so pizza would be automatically mazonos. But if you say that it's only a sweet filling which reduces it to mazonos, so pizza, the base, if it's a hamotzi dough, would be pizza would be hamotzi. So, and indeed, so now someone sends to me a message that he used to live in Borough Park, and he was told that the stores which are selling pizza, and they have the his hechsher from the his achdus, they were told to make the pizza dough with milk, and they didn't want to rely on fruit juice, because fruit juice is, especially, many times it's reconstituted. They've taken concentrate and added water to it, and they weren't happy to rely on that to make it mazonos. So he found it interesting that this achdus hechsher were following like the Alter Rebbe, that for a pizza dough to be mazonos, it'd have to be, you can't rely on the cheese, it'd have to be made with milk or something like that. I told him I'm really not surprised. First of all, it's a hadrin, that's their mission, is a hadrin hechsher, and especially in the Satmar crowd, there's a very great reverence for the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, and therefore I'm not surprised that they have accepted this chumrah of the Alter Rebbe, that to make it mazonos, it'd have to be the dough itself would have to be made with fruit juice, and the presence of cheese on top of it, baked with it, wouldn't be enough to make it mazonos. Finally, this is my last thing for this evening, and that is, we had this discussion about giving your knives to a goysher knife sharpener. So someone's sending me the following. The same machine is used, this is from CRC, I believe, from the Chicago Rabbinical Congress, whatever it's called. So, it writes the following. The same machine is used to sharpen the clean kosher and non-kosher knives, and the friction created by the process does heat up the knives somewhat. If that heat would be above Yad Ledesbury, there would be a potential for blias to transfer between the machinery and the knives. However, in tests which Rabbi Neustadt from the CRC performed in one sharpening company, the sharpening wheel and the cooling water where that was used were consistently cooler than 100 degrees Fahrenheit and were not hot to the touch. As such, it appears that this does not pose a serious concern. And I believe I said something similar, that it's, we're talking on the level of a chumrah, hidur, min hadin, there is room to be mekel, but it would be a chumrah to keep them away from the goyish things. Right. Right, I think that's enough for tonight, and I'm going to wish you all a good voch, and you should have Besuras Tovis and Besuras Hagula, Mashiach Tzidkeinu, V'mheiro Yameinu Mamish.
Amen. Yashikoyach.
While someone's just asked, can we sharpen